My name is Jennifer Phillips, and this is Gansvoort Farm. I've been raising sheep for about 12 years now. One of the ways that we talk about this is that I consider myself a grass farmer. So I raise grass and my sheep harvest it for me.
I'm not certified organic, but I try to manage as organically as possible. So this year, we did have some drought at the beginning of the season. Now that it's mid-August, we have gotten some really good rain in the last few weeks. Now we're getting these heat waves, and I think the sheep really suffer from that. It's really stressful for the animals, and when they're stressed out, their immune system takes a hit, and they're more susceptible to parasites. Probably the way I'm most vulnerable is nonetheless with respect to parasites and extreme heat events. I mean, even though I have shade, it's hard on the animals when it's 95 and, a heat index of 105, 110 like we had this past week. If the animals are growing more slowly and I have death losses to parasites, that both of those will have an impact on, the carcass weights that I'm getting at the end of the season, as well as the number of animals that end up going to market. And of course, now with the rain and high temperatures we're getting, I'm hoping that I don't see a big spike in parasites in the next couple of weeks, but I may, because these are perfect conditions for parasites. I think that's going to be a big challenge as time goes on and we see more and more of this hot, wet weather. It was very cold that winter, 2014, 2015. It was a very long winter. We had snow on the ground right up until April. And I actually did lose a ewe to cold a couple of years ago when we had an extended period of weather like that. I usually like to start rotating them about 3 weeks before lambing so that they get that extra burst of nutrition from the pasture. But winter before last, there was nothing for them to eat until literally right about when lambing started. So that was problematic. And I did have problems lambing that year, and I think it's partly because they were just sedentary in their winter paddock right up until lambing instead of getting exercise of being out. This past year, on the other hand, we had some quite warm weather during lambing, and that was hard on them. You have to plan breeding 5 months in advance, and you don't know exactly what the spring is going to look like. So having that variability in when the season really begins is a little bit of a challenge. And that's probably the kind of weather we may expect with climate change, right? Where you don't necessarily have ultra cold winter, you just have these freezing rain events more in the winter, which I think are hard on the animals. One of the main adaptations that I've tried to implement on my farm is making sure that I've got good shade in every single paddock. So I've planted a lot of trees along field margins. I've divided up some large fields by planting a row of trees through the middle. So that's really helping. I feel strongly that permanent pasture and a diverse amount of trees and other wildlife on the farm really help make a farm more resilient to those kinds of weather extremes. I had a small group of graduate students do a greenhouse gas assessment as an exercise in their course for my farm. They used an online USDA tool called Comet, which farmers can use to do greenhouse gas assessment from cropping systems. The thing that I learned from that assessment was that I think my nitrous oxide emissions are probably higher than I had assumed. I don't use nitrogen fertilizer on the farm, but I frost seed legumes into my pastures. And, just because it's organically managed doesn't mean you don't have nitrous oxide emissions from that system, because there's a lot of nitrate floating around. I think this kind of weather that we're having right now, periods of drought, but then periods of very rainy, wet, very hot weather are probably the type of weather that here is certainly in the Hudson Valley we're going to see more of as climate change progresses.